When the Me Too movement was in full swing, Amber Heard found herself as one of the faces of it until it was revealed in her trial with Johnny Depp that no, she was actually the abuser in the relationship and was ordered to pay millions of dollars to him in restitution for damages to his career after she defamed him and accused him of being a domestic abuser. And a lot of people were upset about this, not because that she lied to them, but because it's going to damage the Me Too movement and it's going to damage what they were trying to build. So as a result, instead of trying to just admit like, yeah, we got fooled by her like everyone else, they were just deciding to double and triple down on this and to try to defend Amber Heard, because a lot of people were calling for boycotts of the upcoming Aquaman movie because she was still cast in the movie and they didn't want to watch the movie so long as she's in it. And a lot of media outlets were trying to defend that and make it seem like, no, the movie isn't going to fail because Amber Heard's in it. And while I do agree she isn't the sole factor to why this movie failed, I do believe she is a contributing factor to the movie's failure. But still, you get media outlets trying to circle the wagons around this movie and defend it. And now they're saying that the movie was actually successful at the box office. And while on the surface, it might seem like that's actually the case when you look at the global box office take, if you really dive into the numbers, you can see that this movie is still a failure for Warner Brothers. Jason Momoa's Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom had soared past $400 million milestone at the global box office. The sequel, directed by James Wan, had established itself as the most successful DC Extended Universe release since the original Aquaman in 2018. Saying this is the most successful DCEU movie since Aquaman in 2018 isn't really saying a whole lot, considering that every other movie since then has been a flop at the box office. This article talks about other movies for Warner Brothers like The Flash, which made $271 million, which was the biggest box office flop in Warner Brothers history. I think the budget for that movie was close to $300 million, so $271 million is not a good sign, especially when you take into consideration that movies only get around 50% of the box office and they still have the marketing costs that usually aren't factored into the reported budget of the movie. And I'll get more on that in a little bit. And then there was Black Adam, which made $390 million, which really isn't a good sign considering the budget of that movie. So that's really what the question is here, is just how good is Aquaman doing when you consider the fact that there is the box office take for theaters, and then there's also the marketing costs for this movie. It says in the article that this movie just crossed the $400 million milestone. So let's look at the numbers and see how well it's actually doing when you factor all that other stuff into things. Right here, it says it made $412 million or $412.6 million at the global box office. And that's on a budget of around $205 million. And if you look at right here, it says worldwide box office is 2 times production budget. And the reason why that is because theaters take a certain gross of the box office proceeds, because theaters don't operate for free, so they get a certain percentage of ticket sales. There's no hard and fast rule about how much theaters take from ticket sales, and it varies from country to country. For instance, in China, they take 70% of ticket sales, but still studios like to release movies in China because it is a big market, and 30% of that is still a pretty good take for them. Other international markets, it varies from 40 to 60%. In the US, it's around 50%. So if you're not really diving into too much details about how much money this movie is making in each individual market, and you're just kind of looking at it as a rule of thumb, you just say it needs to make about double its production budget or double its spend in order to actually make a profit at the global box office. But just doubling the budget isn't necessarily good enough, considering that there is still a huge marketing cost for this movie. And the marketing on some of these huge blockbusters can actually be pretty extraordinary. And even though it's not factored into the production budget, the studios still need to take it into consideration when determining if the movie was successful or not for them. And even though we can't see it, there are still industry experts who actually have an educated guess on what the studios may have spent on it. So that's why I got this article from the Economic Times. It's kind of talking about it, and it's not giving us a hard number on how much they spent on the marketing campaign for Aquaman 2. It is still giving us a range that we can go by. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, check out budget, box office collection, and other details. Now, this is from back in December when they were just kind of going through some of the finance aspects of this movie. Promotion costs of Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. It also did not have a premiere on the red carpet like other films. It seems to have a marketing budget of less than $150 million. So, I mean, that's not saying a whole lot. $150 million, that would be more of in the high note. I'm not expecting that much for this movie. How much does Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom require to make to reach a break-even point? Given its marketing budget to be between 100 to 150 million, it is required to make nearly $300 to $355 million. The $300 to $355 million mark is a little deceiving because some people think that means if it makes that much at the box office, then the movie's a success. But like I pointed out, theaters take about half of the proceeds at the box office. So you have to actually double this to get the true amount that this movie needs to make in order to break even. And for this movie, it needs to make, according to this at least, $600 to around $710 million in order to just break even. Now, keep in mind, this is assuming that the budget that they reported is an accurate budget breakdown because, like I said before, they did a lot of reshoots and the budget for this movie could have been closer to the $300 million mark. I personally think it's probably closer to the $250 million mark, but again, we're just taking them at their word for this. So even if you're just taking them at their word, they need to make around $600 to $700 million in order to just break even at the box office. And so far, the movie's kind of on its way out of theaters. It's already on streaming services, and it's nowhere near that mark. So this movie is going to be another huge blunder for Warner Brothers.